All right, how's it going, everyone? I'm back with another refactoring live coding video where I don't know how much refactoring I'll do in this, but some subscriber sent me a project and asked if I could kind of like review his code and maybe clean some stuff up or refactor some things. So I don't really have a real agenda in this video. We're just going to kind of share what he's been building and look at the code and see if we can kind of figure this out. Oops, didn't mean to click that button. So he's making like a Trello board application, and a lot of his data is actually being stored in indexedDB. I've never used indexedDB before, but it looks like it's a way to have like a locally running database kind of that's built into the browser. So that's pretty cool. I'll have to learn more about that. I'm going to delete that table, and I'm also going to delete local storage from nickname. You notice when the app first loads, it asks you for your nickname. I'll put Bob. I'm not really sure what the point of this is. But maybe what we could do is, like, as we see every screen, we can actually look at the code too. So a good way to find the components, since I've never used this application before, is you can go to your React Dev Tools, to the Components tab, and click on this little selector thing, and just select an element, and it'll take you to the component that that element belongs in. In this case, we have a nickname form. It'd be nice if you can like copy and paste this. Okay, so let's go and open up nickname form and kind of look through this. And by the way, I want to kind of point out that, let me revert this real quick. I went ahead and added ESLint to his project, and I have a couple of things that I like to do on my project that kind of make the code a little bit cleaner. If you look at his nickname form, he puts like all of his properties on one line. I think this is like not really a good way to read code. Like, you have to scroll. It's terrible. Especially if you like using split panels, because now it's like your code just cannot be maintainable. So I installed ESLint and I lint on save. So now I can actually view all these by hand, and I can actually have the code in split panels, since I usually work off a laptop. So I like this better. Other than Tailwind CSS, which is always going to go off your screen because you have to have like a billion classes on every component. But a good approach for this, or another reason I do this approach, is you can easily comment out comments just like this. And that's all you got to do. All right, so I would suggest put every property on a new line. All right, so we're trying to look at the nickname form and just kind of understand like how it's working. Probably also go to his app, because I believe he has some routers here. He's using React Router DOM. And do some cleanup here. Just remove the use ref. If you're not using something, remove it. Same thing with this stuff. Like, I guess he's not using any of those variables. So like, always just listen to your editor. If it says you're not using these variables, then delete them, because it's just more noise for you and your brain to understand. So just make sure you just clear out the stuff you don't need. All right, so app.js, I think he's using create react app for his setup, which isn't bad. But if you look at the nickname form, that is being imported, and if name has not been set, he is going to show this form. So I don't know what the point of the nickname is, to be honest. You look at the form, it just has you type in a name, and then we save it to local storage. So maybe this is loaded somewhere else, and we can kind of figure that out. Honestly, he also like reloads the page once you set the nickname on local storage. I don't know why he didn't just go ahead and make like a different route for this instead of just reloading the page. But like, this is kind of like acting as a guard, where he doesn't want anything to show until you set that nickname. But honestly, he's using a React router, so you could have just pushed to the dashboard instead of reloading the whole page. I wouldn't like force the users to reload the page. So like, if you were to bring in the router, which I don't even know how you do it. Is it location equals use location? I think that's how you do it with React router. I could say location.push and just push in the dashboard page instead of reloading the entire page, because like, there might be some state that you don't want to clear out. And it's saying use location may only be used in the context of router. Okay, so that's probably why he is refreshing the page, because he can't do that here. Yeah, I mean, let me just revert that. This is like a low-hanging fruit, but I would probably figure out a way to like get this nickname form inside a page and just have like some type of router guard on all these routes to redirect you to that page if you're not actually if your nickname's not set. But anyway, once you type in the nickname, sorry for wasting your time. We don't really do anything there. Let me get rid of use location. One thing I noticed about this, his code though, is that he doesn't do an on submit on the form. So let me show you like a bug. If I go back to the nickname stuff and I press like Bob and press enter, notice that the page just refreshes. Like nothing actually happened, nothing actually submitted. So if you're going to use forms, like make sure that you actually do an on submit here. So like on submit and then like call a function, which, you know, all this one. And by default, when you have like a button inside of a form, I don't know why I made this an input. Maybe that's semantic HTML, but I like to do buttons of type submit, I believe. When you actually have a type button, or sorry, a button of type submit, you don't need to do an on click, because now whenever the thing is actually submitted, it's going to submit the form up here, if that makes sense. So that will basically not have it refresh the page when... Actually, I'm kind of curious where the button went now. Like it's gone. Button submit. Well, obviously it didn't have any code in it. So if I say submit, or what did it have before? Was it like login? Yeah, just submit. Right, there we go. So now when I type in like Bob and press enter, the page actually submits correctly, and that name has been persisted to local storage, which is I think what he wants. So now we're logged in. We're at, what route are we at? We're at the dashboard. And if I go to the app, let's look at the route here and look at what the home page does. Again, just delete whatever stuff that we don't need to have displayed. So props.nickname, it should say hello Bob, and that's where he's getting nickname from. And nickname is missing in props validation. Let me go ahead and just turn this off in my ESLint, because obviously I use like TypeScript typically. So I don't care about the props validation. There we go. Yeah, so let's just read through this code real quick. What is this actually doing? Well, he's on a home page. This is a red flag to me. If you ever have like a variable inside your React component, like let temp, this is not going to actually store any type of, it's not the proper way to store stuff, right? So we have to figure out where this temp is being used. And he looks like he pushes things into it, which the issue with this is that when you push things into this, React doesn't know to re-render the page because it's not hooked into state. So like when you're writing React, don't do stuff like this. If you need an array that you can mutate, use a useRef hook. I'm not sure, I have to read this code more to understand what he's trying to get at, but yeah, we'll kind of read through this. Data is not used, so let's just go ahead and delete it. And let's try to figure out what's going on here. So the first thing to do is like look at the use effect and figure out like what is the component doing when it first mounts. This is like a good place to look. And right off the bat, it's calling a get recent tasks function, which I'm guessing is loading something from indexedDB, right? He calls an openDB function, which is here, which opens a Trello table, I'm guessing. Is this like the table name? Attempts to open a connection to the named database with the current version. So I guess this Trello is the database. And once he opens a connection to that database, he has the ability to do stuff. Again, I've never used indexedDB, but I mean, it seems like it's pretty cool. It's built into the browser. But it looks like you can grab an object store and you can open a cursor to the object store. And yeah, all this seems kind of intense. So I mean, what I would say is like, first of all, your component shouldn't know about where your data is being stored. So that's kind of a red flag to me. We can try to refactor this and, you know, see if we can kind of get it to work. But what we should probably do first is actually store a task, because I think he's trying to, you know, retrieve some tasks from a database. So let's look at his code and see how do you create a task. Looks like you go to all boards, and I'll say like my board is to-do list. Hello. And again, I think this thing is broken too. If I hit enter, notice that it doesn't do anything. So I actually have to go and like click on the submit. again, like use forms and use the on submit callback so that your forms can actually be like submitted properly. Because there's people out there who actually depend on tabs, like maybe they, they need accessibility. And if you don't actually set up your application to handle accessibility, then it's just not, it's not cool. So when you create the board, it has a board down here that he can delete and edit, and I can click on the board. I won't critique the styling of this because I suck at styling as well. So I think it looks, it's quaint, but it could use some improvement, I guess. But once you have a board, I guess you can start making some tasks. So add a new column. I'll say like to do could be a column. Again, like if I press enter there, the entire application just refreshed and put the input in the query string. So I don't think that's what he's going for. And in fact, let me show you a trick. I like to just select some text that I think is going to be static, and I can search the entire project for it and go straight to where that text is found. Okay, so now I know exactly where this input is. It's a little bit faster sometimes than using the React Components tab in Chrome. But once you're here, I mean, like, he has a form, but again, he's not doing like on submit, and he's not calling on submit here. And again, he likes to use inputs of type button. I don't know if I've ever done that before. Like I use buttons of type submit. Now, leave a comment below if you think there's a better way to do, like, should you be using inputs or should you be using buttons? I think buttons make more sense and they might have more semantic meaning than an input of type button, but they might end up just becoming the same thing under the hood. Who knows? I should probably know, but I don't. The on click, again, you don't need the on click on the button because the form will handle the on submit. And make sure you have the prevent default, which he does, so that's good. Let's try it again. I'm going to type in like to do. I'll say doing and done. So that's pretty cool. He has some columns that he can make tasks on. So let's pretend like we have a to-do list called refactor, and that's kind of weird. It kind of, as I typed into this one, you guys see that? When I typed into this one, it changed the state of all of these components. So we could try to fix that. I mean, I know I went from doing one task and now I'm like jumping around to fixing other stuff, but let's try to figure out like where's this coming from and why is it broken? So again, go to the components tab, which is here. Go ahead and click on this thing and click on this component. And let's try to figure out where this thing is coming from. And it looks like it comes from nesting context provider board. Yeah, I don't know. I have to go to the board, which I'm already on. And let's just read through the code because that didn't really help me. I think the fact that he's using like a transition is like breaking, like we're not getting any good like information about like what this thing is. Like what component did this come from? But yeah, so let's figure out like what is this thing here that you type into. It's an input box, so I guess I could just hover over this and find something that has add a task as a placeholder. So add a task. So there's that component. There's a bunch of red here. Like the linter is letting me know that like, hey, you're mapping over something and you didn't put a key. So make sure you put keys on your maps so that React properly knows how to re-render and commit your changes. Otherwise, it has a hard time knowing how to do that stuff. Like I think here is also like put a key here. And technically, like you shouldn't use the index. You should probably use an actual like real ID. So in this case, I think he does have task ID. So I'd probably say task.id. And I would probably get rid of index if you could. Yeah, I'd probably get rid of index, and he doesn't need to put a key here, so delete that one. Make sure I'm not breaking the code. Let me go back. So again, what we're trying to fix is like when you type into this thing, why is it updating in a bunch of different places? And also there's something that's kind of smelly about this. What is he trying to do here? So he loops over the tasks, and if the task data column ID is equal to the column ID, then you render it with the task name. Okay, I think I know what he's trying to do here. I think he has like an array of all the tasks that are on the board, and he's trying to like put them in the correct columns. So that's how he's checking that stuff out. And then over here, he loops through the columns. There might be a way we can clean that up. But again, let's stay focused. I'm getting like, I'm jumping around. Let's go back to this input, which I think is this one. And when you type into this, so on change, set task name, let us go ahead and look. By the way, you don't have to put curly braces here. Like you could just do that, the same thing. And set task name, let's look at where this is getting set. So it's up here in state, and that's being shared by everything, which is probably not good. Also, this file is pretty big. It's like 300 something lines of code. Like maybe find a way to refactor that. But let's see if we can fix this. So when they're typing into this input, like I think this whole thing, we should probably like make it its own component. Like there's no reason to have this whole thing be nested in here. So what exactly is this thing called? It's not a board. Or maybe this is called a column. All right, so at the very least, like cut this stuff out and let's make a component at the top. Man, this file's big. Wait, I think he has a column, so I'm not sure why he's doing this. This must be like a placeholder column. Man. Anyway, I'll just make a function here called like column, which I believe that's like what he's trying to do here. He has like a column. And let's try to figure out like what does transition have to come from a provider or something? I think it'll be okay. Function column. Oh, okay. I'm so used to doing fat arrows that I'm obviously doing it wrong. So let's figure out what things need to be passed in to make this thing work as like a subcomponent. It looks like you also need column here. And then the column has tasks, which I guess we could pass tasks in. Navigate, we should probably pass that in. Now the reason I'm doing this is because like we didn't want that one input changing for every single column when people typed. Like that was kind of a smell. So we could probably just display a column here, and we need to make sure that we also pass in the properties that we just defined here, which is all of these things. So let's do the column here, and let's just go ahead and like do all this jazz. Index is showing navigate. All right, so hopefully I'm making this code better by pulling out this component like this. At least it's a little bit easier to read, I think. And then honestly, I like to put these on one line. Like that's just a preference. Like this. I think it's easier to read. But let's try to figure out, we have a issue. I think I'm missing a parenthesis somewhere. Missing a key prop for element. So I should probably pass in the column. Does it have a column ID? I'll just do index for now, but I'm assuming that the column has an ID on it. Which if we look over here, it has call.id, yeah. So let's go back down to that. Let's say call ID, and that's probably more proper. My linter is complaining to me because I need to put that on a new line. All right, so the code still won't work because there's like still a ton of other stuff that we have to bring in, such as task name. So here's the original bug we're trying to fix. Like we want to get that task name stuff out of the top level component because it's something that's more like specific to the actual task itself. And in fact, I'm I think, yeah, never mind. I'm getting myself confused. So I'm going to pull that task state here so that the column itself, like you can type into just one column and not have it update all three of the columns. what else can we do? So we definitely need to figure out how to get create task on key up, create task. So I think this is probably checking like if they press enter. Yeah. So let's pull this whole thing out because that's only used in the column itself. So we can pull that whole function out here. And that means we have to pull more stuff out. Get object store. Where is that defined or coming from? Is this like a global get object store? Like, I don't know where this thing is actually. Oh, it's right here. It's a function. Okay. What am I doing right now? Okay, on delete and on edit, like maybe we should pull all those out because I guess they were used for the column itself. Let's just go ahead and do that. I think on edit was here, yeah. So at this point, like we're just trying to go through and separate out a component so this file's not so large. And again, we're trying to fix like a single bug, but that bug just spiraled out of control because in order to fix that bug, you need to have it in a separate component so you're not like sharing state. Anyway, let's go back up. This refactoring might take a while. So they were calling OpenDB here, and that's not defined anymore. I'm trying to figure out like where was that coming from, and I'm not sure where that's coming from. Like, is this just a global? That's okay. It's right here. Open object store. I'm gonna go ahead and copy that because I think we're gonna have to use it somewhere else. And off the bat, like I want to refactor how he's doing the database stuff because he has it sprinkled all throughout his components, which is not good. So we'll have to go back and refactor that. But right now, let's figure out what this is. Create task. This was expecting an ID. Again, if you can name stuff better, like ID is not very descriptive. Is that a column ID? Is that a task ID? Is it some other ID? Who knows? I don't know. So where was that actually being used before? It was being used here. But ID was set here, use params. Okay, so that's the ID of in the router, which I don't know if I want to change this right now. I probably shouldn't, but if I go back to app and we go to the board, this is the board ID, I believe. So let's name it something that's descriptive, like board ID, so that we can actually use it correctly here. Okay, I might be breaking everything at this point, so maybe I'm just getting over ambitious of refactoring because I don't think I even have the application working yet. But you get what I'm trying to say? Like, name your stuff more descriptive, so when someone reads through it, they know exactly like what you're referring to when it says ID. Yeah, let's just keep on going. Let's see if we can get this application working because right now it's going to be super broken. Get columns, set hidden, set column to edit. So like these are all things that we probably need to pull out. Submit edit. Yikes. I think I made a complete mess of this entire file now. So is showing, set is showing. Man. Create a task. Well, anyway, I mean, this component, like we should probably have it passed in a board ID. Let's focus on the original issue so that we can set this the board ID. And then down at the bottom where we actually call column, let's just pass in the board ID like this, right? So that this column is not coupled to React Router at all. It's a standalone component. All it needs is the ID and it doesn't care where the ID comes from. What else shall we do? So obviously this isn't defined, so I have to go and figure out where that thing is set up, which I don't know why we're calling get tasks again. So I'm going to pass this in. And bear with me. I know if you're watching this, you're like, dude, why aren't you refactoring this? Why aren't you refactoring that? Like, there's so much I could refactor right here now that I'm looking through this code, and I can only focus on like one or two at a time. So if I'm not refactoring the thing that you think that I should be refactoring, then I apologize. Let me go ahead and pass that in, and let's go ahead and see what else is missing. I'm just going to do this like the easiest way I can think of, which is split panel. Just pass in everything that this thing needs, and we'll call it a day. So let's see what else this thing needs. It needs set hidden, which I don't even know what set hidden is being used for, and set column to edit. Oh, he called it set call to edit. Okay. My linter usually, the lint rule I like to use is I like to have my object properties all in one line too. I'm not sure why my linter is not doing that. I must be missing it. This thing needs hidden too. So there's like this idea of like single responsibilities principle when you're coding and making components and modules. And you try to keep your components as small as possible and not have to know so much. But this thing is totally failing that principle. Like this thing knows everything. And that's a big red flag to me. But at this point, it's like I'm already in, so I gotta like keep going. I'm surprised my app even loaded right there. So did we fix the original issue, or do we have 1,000 other bugs? We probably do. Let me just do a hard refresh to make sure we don't have any bugs. And let's type in something. What is up? And press enter. Wow. I'm surprised we actually did that. There's no bugs. I'm impressed. Let's just test this one, and let's test this one. Cool. So yeah, let's just keep on trying to refactor some stuff, and boy, this component is insane. So let's look at this. How can we make this file easier to understand? Well, first of all, I'd probably pull it out into a separate file. So I'm going to go ahead and just like take all of this code, this whole column thing, and I'm going to put it here inside this column.js file. I don't know why he has this separate column.js thing. Maybe it was like a placeholder and he never got around to actually doing it. But it would be nice to just pull that out into a separate file. Headless UI, fragment. Anything else I'm missing here? All right, so we pulled that out. We pulled the fragment out. We are able to clean this code up just a little bit. And I think we need to find where we're doing column and make sure we auto import that too. So moment of truth, go back to the UI, do a hard refresh, make sure there's no errors or bugs. And it looks like it's still working, so that's good. So now this file is like 200 lines of code instead of, I think it was like 300 something. And column, we extracted 118. So whenever you can, like try to make smaller components that do less. Okay, so at this point, I don't know where we should start. Like, should we start on the board or the column? Honestly, here's one magic number that we should not use. Just do this instead of hard coding stuff to numbers. Like, I don't know what 13 meant. If I was just reading through this code, the only reason I knew it was enter is because I used the application. I pressed the enter key. So make sure you don't hard code magic numbers, and you can even pull this up to the top of the file if you want. But let us just look around. I'm kind of overwhelmed with all this code, I'll be honest. I'm not trying to like talk bad about the person who sent this code in, but it's intense. Set is showing and is showing. Let's just kind of look at this. What is set is showing for? And what is showing for? It's for the column. And if it's set to is showing true, show true. I guess I'm confused here because we have set is showing, but we never set it to false. So this is like something that's always true. And I have no idea like why this was even in state to begin with. So I'm going to go off my intuition and just delete it. and find anywhere I'm saying is showing. I'm going to delete it. I'm going to delete it from column, is showing. Don't need to be passing as props. And I'm going to guess that transition, either you can hard code it to true or you can just not do it. Okay, you have to hard code it to true. So I'm going to say just true. All right, so now we don't have this like random is showing state that wasn't really even used anywhere, and we deleted that completely. So that's one step in the right direction. Can we keep on refactoring this more? So one thing that's really bothering me is the fact that we have like all these things that are used for fetching data from the database, and they're like directly in the component. So I mean, I think if we just pull those out into like, you can make them hooks, I guess. I could do hooks, and I can make one called like use get columns dot JS. Export const use get columns is a function that's going to do this. And he has it here as a function. Where does he call this function? He calls it different areas. Get board information is going to call get columns. So actually, let me maybe not use a hook just yet. I might be getting way too ahead of myself because that's going to be even more of a refactoring. I'm going to just rename this to just API. How about that? Our services, I don't really know what you want to call it. It doesn't really matter. Just name something and keep it consistent. But I'm going to rename this to get columns. Because really, like, the whole idea of your components knowing about indexedDB is probably not a good thing. And let me find out where I'm doing OpenDB, because I guess we need that too. So we need this, which I think this is used all over the place again. So I'm going to go ahead and just make one called OpenDB.js. Export. I'll paste that in. Like so. IndexedDB. Is this thing a global? Kind of. IndexedDB. I guess I'm confused. How do we have access to indexedDB? I guess, oh, okay. I see what he's doing. So I guess for every browser, he falls back based on this. So like this, technically like this should come from, probably come from like the DB thing. Let me just not change that yet. I know I'm going to start breaking stuff if I change too much, and it's going to be impossible to continue with this video if I break too much stuff. So this thing, OpenDB, is going to open the database. At this point, like, we could just not have it hard-coded there. I'm going to auto import at the top. And we're trying to also like have access to that there, so I'm going to import it. He has a method called getObjectStore, which is defined in board. Actually, it's defined all over his application. So I'm going to go ahead and make another one called getObjectStore. Go ahead and just like paste that here. And hopefully we can kind of auto import that too. Not working. There we go. Board ID and set columns. So I think what this function is supposed to do, and if he's using TypeScript, it'd be much easier to like make an interface and like go back and fix the interfaces where it broke. But this thing needs a board ID. So let's pass it a board ID. And right now it needs a set columns. But honestly, like, I think what he should do is this thing should not know about how to set state anywhere. So set columns, I believe, was like a state setter. Yeah, so this thing, if you want to know about like decoupling and understanding like how to decouple code, this is like an API code that just calls indexedDB and returns data. That's all it should do. So it shouldn't call React setters. You might be inclined to like pass this thing in, but that's not what you want to do, in my opinion. What you want to do here is you want to return a new promise that has a resolve, and we'll go ahead and do this. I'm going to cut all this code out and paste it in, and I'm going to go ahead and just resolve that column. So hopefully you understand how promises work. I'm basically making a promise, which is going to resolve once it fetches the data and sends that back. Maybe we can even refactor this. He's doing a for loop with indexes. Like, this is a red flag. Like, you don't, try not to do for loops like this. This is like such a C type of for loop. We have JavaScript that has like things that we can easily just like loop over what we're trying to get, which I'm not sure what C is. Event targets result. Don't name variable C. Like, I have no idea what this means. I guess it's a column. So let's just name it column. Actually, I'm going to name it columns because I believe it's multiple. I'm going to say let column of columns. And he seems to want to only get the ones that are part of this board. So calls.push column if this scenario is proper. Bear with me, I'm still trying to like grasp this code. But I think he's trying to do this. And then I like to have my if statements always have like curly braces. Like, I never omit curly braces. It just makes it harder to understand if you omit them. I think the resolve was supposed to go up here. And I don't know if I probably broke something. I did. All right, so can we refactor this further? Yes, I think we can. We could probably actually just like do a resolve on columns.filter. And then we're going to pass in column. We're going to pass in this if statement. So only get the columns that are in that board. And I think that's all we need to do there. It's a little bit cleaner. I don't know what R is. It all. R on success. I guess this is like a request. Again, don't name your variables C and R, like super bad. It's just hard to understand and read. From like, if you don't know the project and you come in, you see C and R and A and X and I, it's overwhelming. So like, I would just name them like I just did. So hopefully this works. I mean, if you think about what this is doing, this is actually getting columns in board. So let's name it to be a lot more descriptive of what it's doing. And hopefully this thing works. I mean, I kind of did a lot of refactoring. And let's go, if we can get the columns. This is the thing we just kind of refactored. So I'm going to delete it. And we should get some IntelliSense to tell us like where we broke everything. And it broke a couple of places. But what we could do here is like do a dot then and just say set columns. Although I don't know what it was called. Yeah, set calls. All right, so we could do that there. Get columns by board, pass a board ID, and go ahead and make sure I name that properly. Get columns by board. I wish my auto import would just work. Get columns in board. Okay. So it helps if I name the things correctly. This was get columns in board. And let's do this. Let's see if this works. My auto import is still not working. There we go. Sometimes you have to have the file open on the side for the auto import to work. Kind of annoying, but so we're going to try to do the same approach everywhere else that he's calling get columns. And I'm not even going to try to understand like why he's calling get columns so many times. But get columns in board. He's calling it here too for some reason. So we have to go look at columns and where he's calling get columns, which was here. Like technically this thing is going to have is going to need to call set columns. So I think we're going to have to pass in set columns here. I have to go back to the board and say set columns is equal to set calls. Bear with me, y'all. This code is we're making it cleaner. We're making it cleaner. So let's see if we actually broke something. It looks like we might have, because now stuff is not showing up. So cannot access request before it's initialized and get columns and board. So let's go ahead and go to get columns and board. And we're going to go over to, we're going to go here and look at where it's complaining about. Oh, I have a request here and a request here and a request here. Usually in my linter, there's a good lint rule you can set up called like variable overloading. So I'm just going to call it a get all request here, and that should hopefully fix our issue a little bit. Okay. So there we have it. We got some stuff back. And we've pulled out the get columns to its own little like helper function. So I think we're making some improvements. Let's go ahead and see if we can do the same thing with these other methods, like get tasks. He looks like he's hitting a lot of indexedDB here. So get columns in board. Let's make another one called like get tasks.js. It's going to be a very similar approach. So let's just see if we can kind of get this one knocked out of the park. Same thing, return new promise, resolve. It's a function that returns a promise, calls all this code, and then it resolves tasks. Resolves tasks. Loading set is equal to false. I don't think we need that, but we'll have to keep that in mind. So again, like we have this loop that we don't need. So let's just go ahead and do this. And I'm gonna go ahead and just do T. And it looks like he wants to get the board stuff. So I think we're good here. And then this could be called tasks. So let's just go turbo mode and get this all kind of set up. Get all tasks. Get all tasks. All right, so now let's figure out where this thing was being called, because I'm assuming it's called different places. And we're gonna say .then set tasks. Just like that. And I believe he says loading of, I forgot what it was, like loading of something. Okay, well this is like an object that has, yeah, this should be in state. I mean, I'll make it go to like what it was before. I think he was doing something like this. Oh, he was saying loading.set is equal to false. Is that correct? Because get task is no longer doing it anymore. So I'm gonna go ahead and delete get tasks, and we're gonna await on this. But we can't await on it. So let me just go ahead and do another promise chain here. We probably could do an async await, to be honest. I'm gonna go ahead and import this. Is there anywhere else we're doing get tasks? No, this is the only place. So again, the goal we're trying to do here is remove any OpenDB stuff. So here's another one where we should probably get rid of, and I'm gonna say like get board.js and go ahead and see if we can like do a very similar thing. So import opening DB, import that. This needs to take a board ID. All this stuff goes away. Get board info. This takes in a board ID. And it's doing a bunch of stuff here. So set board, set tasks, set whatever. So what we should probably do here is just do a promise chain. And we're going to get back some board info. And I'm guessing the B here was for his board info. So let's just go ahead and like kind of do that. And what else do we need to do? Get columns and board. Gets the columns, sets the columns, this. Go ahead and import that. Loading set is equal to true. Downloads all the board info. So again, we're trying to like strip away. We don't want this thing to know anything about React. So I'm gonna go ahead and say board, resolve board, and do the same approach that we did earlier with the other files. Like this thing should probably return a new promise with a resolve, and just go ahead and like pull that up and delete those things because we don't care about them. And is this cleaner? Looks like it's cleaner. So let's make sure this works. Set board is not defined. Where was that being called? If I look at the error code, it'll probably tell me. Get board of 13. Why was it? Hold on, let me refresh. I'm gonna do a hard refresh and go back to the console log here. and try to figure out why this is not returning the things I think it would. Set board info, board ID. Let's make sure this thing actually, like, I'll put a debugger here, and I want to make sure this thing actually gets called with the correct data. So we have board info, which has a .data on it. So I think that's the issue, is that get board info should probably return board.data. And I think if I just do that and get rid of the debugger, we should be good. Maybe. Board info.data.name. Okay. Let me just do this. Okay, so the boards are showing up. I think I did a similar approach with the other endpoints where, like, these things might need to, like, do something with data. I probably refactored that and might have broken it. But let's just go ahead and go to get tasks and see if this is resolving the correct thing. Go ahead and do this. Go ahead and, oh, wait a second. I'm not doing board ID here. So again, like, just use TypeScript. I would have been warned that, like, I'm not passing a board ID to this. So, like, just use TypeScript. That's the best advice I can kind of give you. And in fact, there, the data showing up. I might do like a async await here, because I think it would make more sense. This promise chaining is kind of getting kind of crazy. So, like, fetch board info is a function. In fact, it's going to be an async function that does all of this stuff. So go ahead and pull that up. Go ahead and put the loading set equals true, which I don't think we should be doing, but I'll keep at it. I'll do this. Go ahead and set the board info when it comes in. We don't need a .then here. And then also I'm going to say const columns is equal to a weight of this. You know, sometimes, like, I kind of doubt, like, is async await actually making it cleaner or not? I think these two make sense as promises, because, like, if you convert in the async await, then you're going to have to, like, do your own promise all to, like, make it more proficient, because you want to fetch the columns and the boards at the same time, I believe. So I might just keep this one as an await, because we need the board info, I think, to get. You know what? Let me just undo all this stuff. I think I'm making this complicated. Sometimes it's okay to keep promise chaining. I don't have an issue with it. I think the issue I have with what's going on here is this doesn't necessarily need to be nesting that, I don't think. And I'm gonna get rid of this loading stuff. I'll be honest with you. This whole loading thing up here, this is not how you're supposed to do it. Like, you shouldn't have an object that's just a variable up here. Like, this should be state. So I'm gonna delete it, and hopefully we won't run into too many issues where this is set. Is loading, set is loading. I'll do this. And again, like, if you just use, like, React query, it probably would have been a better experience. I'm gonna make it default to true. And then when all this use effect stuff is done, which we could do like a promise.all, go ahead and pass it all that stuff like so. So when all of these things are done, I'll do a .then, and then I'll just set this to false. Okay. And if you're watching this, you're like, dude, you're using, like, why are you using promise chaining? I don't know. I've been coding with promises for a long time, so I don't look at promises and get like I don't think they're that gross. Like, you can write them in a way that's kind of elegant. But I did break something. Set is loading should have turned to false at some point. So let's actually make sure if this is getting hit, which I doubt it is, because it would have turned off. So let's refresh the page. It is getting hit to here. And I think it's because I just need to do that. Yeah, there we go. All right, so again, I'm just going to try to refactor this board. I'm not going to go through this whole code base because it's a lot of code. And this video is almost like an hour long now. But is there any more OpenDB stuff? There is more OpenDB stuff. So let's see if we can kind of get rid of that remaining stuff. What is he doing here? He's trying to make a request to store a column. So again, like you have an on submit here. What is the submit doing? It looks like it is adding a new column. So on add column submit, like you can name variables to describe what they're doing so that I can look at this function and know like, okay, well, this is when someone tries to submit the column form. And then sometimes you can call it handle. Like I've been doing that a lot in my videos. So like handle, I know for a fact it's coming from like a DOM element. And if it doesn't have handle in front of it, then I know it's coming from like an internal utility that I probably wrote myself. So let's kind of go back, handle, add column submit. And when you call this, he is doing an OpenDB request and doing all this stuff. So again, we could pull this out to another service called like create board or persist board, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to make a function called const export const create board, and that probably needs to take in some type of like I don't know, some type of data. Looks like it needs a column name and a board ID. Although I'm not sure why it needs a board ID, because aren't you creating a new board? Hold on, I think I'm getting myself confused. Handle add column submit. I think this is add a new column. Add a column submit. Add a column. Yeah, I named this wrong. This should be called like add column. There we go. Column name and board ID. So again, like we should probably just return a promise. So return new promise, resolve. This is a function that does some stuff like so. And we could just return or resolve the things that are needed from here, which in this case, we don't really need get columns and board. He wants to refetch the columns and board for some reason, but I'm just going to resolve with nothing because I don't think we need to resolve with anything. And I can go over here to where we were calling it before, and I'll say add column. I'm going to pass it the column name and the board ID. All right. And I'm going to go ahead and just do a dot then and just call those methods as he seems to not use async await places. In fact, this is a good example of when we could use async await. So I could just wait on this. And what did I do? Yikes. Where did my code go? Here. I'm going to wait on it, and then I'm going to call those things. That makes sense? So we don't have to do any of this stuff, hopefully, if we did this right. And let's just go ahead and do one called test. All right, so it's still working. That's awesome. All right, so again, I think he's doing another one, submit edit. So I would like to kind of, I'm going to rename this one. I think you can do a F2 and call handle submit edit task. I think that's what he's editing. He's editing the task, I believe. Actually, it says edit the column. Maybe I should call it submit edit column, which, how do you even do that in the UI? I guess it's here. Handle submit edit column. So this is a hidden thing, which I guess only shows up when you press the edit button or something. Let's go here, set hidden. So now it's all coming full circle. Like, what does hidden mean? Well, it's actually the edit modal. So let's kind of do some refactoring. I'm going to say set show edit column name. I'll just do that. Set show edit column modal. And we're going to go ahead and get the current value of it and I guess do that. Although I could just say true. It says open edit. So like when you click it, you should just open the modal, right? And I'm going to go back to the thing that's calling this, which is called set hidden. And I'm literally going to rename all this stuff because set hidden is not a good name because it doesn't actually like explain what is it hiding, what is it showing. Okay, and go into the code base and figure out where we're doing that. That show edit. Oh, I'll do this. All right. Where else is hidden coming from? Oh man, he's doing it down here too. On click, on close. I'm just gonna make a function called like close edit modal. And we'll just call this function here. I'll just do this. I'm just gonna go ahead and try to get this out real quick. And we need to basically find out where we're hiding that modal, which I think we do it. Where do we do it? We do it here. So I'm gonna go ahead and just pull that out to this. And then I'm gonna call this one here instead. And I could just instead make this false. And I know I'm like jumping around everywhere, but I want to kind of make sure this is working. And I'm gonna change this to if it's showing, if it's true, then that's when we show it. And I'm gonna default this to false because that makes more sense in my head. I did break something though. Unfortunately, hidden is not defined. Where do we have that being used? And why is it being passed in here? Because we don't even use hidden anywhere. So I'm gonna delete hidden. I'm gonna go ahead and delete it here. There we go. Click edit. What happens? Do we get anything? Nothing happens. So let's go back in the column and look at where we call edit. Set show edit column modal is true. Okay. Does open edit get called anywhere? So let's put a debugger here and let's verify when you click on edit, it actually gets stopped here, and it does. So that's good. Oh, the edit column is down here. I guess he just hasn't styled it, or maybe I broke the styling. Kind of strange, but let's just go ahead and type in something and click submit. And now it's changed up here. So that's still working. Give her the debugger. I feel like we're so close to having this file refactored. So there's like another thing here, which again, like this whole modal, let's just pull this whole modal out. Like there's no reason for this thing to be even here. Okay, so like, again, we can make a function up here called like edit column modal or panel. I don't know what he's going for. I think he was going for a modal. And we could just go ahead and return. Keep doing that. Just make sure you take in whatever props that you need, which looks like it needs calls to edit, edited name, handle submit, edit closed. So I'm going to pull this whole thing out. Like there's no reason for this board to know about how to like save the edit. And then edited name. Bear with me, I know I'm jumping around, so I'm probably confusing the heck out of everyone watching. But I'm trying to pull out some state, so like we're not like doing the same thing everywhere. Close edit modal. Yeah, that should probably take in that function. Set columns. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I feel like this thing it knows too much. I'm going to import these things just right now, but we're going to go and probably pull out those things to something else. All right, so that's not used anymore. And if I go down to where this modal thing was being used, I could just do this. And I can go ahead and I don't need to put like a blank div here. Like just don't show anything if it's not defined. So you can do this with a double and just like don't show it. And let's go to the very top of this and figure out like what things this thing needs to take in. So let's just go ahead and do this. And I'm gonna go ahead and kind of pull that comma out. I wish there was an easier way to do this in React where you had to like do all these extra like equals and then curly braces and then equals and curly braces. Kind of tedious. All right, so we have this thing potentially working now. Let's see. Got a debugger running. If I click edit, this thing pops up. Type in like doing and click submit. It hides and it changes the thing. So that's good. It's working now. I'm not going to work on getting it to be an actual modal, like styling it. It's going to take too much time. But we have like one more thing that I saw that, I mean, we should definitely pull out to another service. Like, I think it's this. This whole thing, actually, no, this whole thing could be something called edit column name. Or just edit column, whatever. And I'll make export const edit column is a function that does all of this stuff. Auto import that, auto import that. That edited name does not need to be called. Put edited column. I'll just say like, it'll take in that. This should work. Again, like we got to do the return new promise because we want to know when this thing is actually done, right? So let's just go ahead and resolve this. Go ahead and do this. And make sure you call resolve at some point. I guess here, I'm just going to resolve it in both places. Why not? I'm not sure why he's doing it on error. This is the first time I've seen him do an on error on anything else, but let us try using this. So let's go back to our code and I'm going to go ahead and just call this. Do it out then on it. So when it's done, we can call a function. Go ahead and delete that. And I'm going to go ahead and pull this stuff out. And I'm going to go ahead and make sure we have this thing auto imported in the file. And edit a call. What is this thing? This thing needs to actually take in. Oh, I guess we need to do that. This seems like a smell to me a little bit. I mean, like, we could put it here. But again, I don't know why he's doing all this weird stuff, but yeah, did we make this code cleaner? So now this component like doesn't care about how it reads and writes from this little indexedDB. And the beauty is that you could easily switch this to an API in the future. Like this component doesn't know if it's talking to an API, local storage, indexedDB, or just memory. Instead, it's just calling a function, and later on you can kind of refactor this as you need to. And I think this looks better. I mean, like I need to figure out the ESLint thing for doing this. Like this. I like to make my components look like that. It's easier to read. But man, yeah, I mean, we did a lot of refactoring. There's a lot of stuff that, oh wait, hold on. I need to pull this out to a different component. Edit column. I don't remember what I called it. Edit column modal. All right, so I think we were, I thought we were on the home stretch, but we have to pull in some of this other stuff. React must be in scope. All right, let's see. Any errors in this file? It doesn't seem like it. That looks kind of smelly. Let's move that. This is kind of smelly with the curly braces, so let's get rid of those. And go back to the boards. I want to make sure I import this thing, which I need to do down here. All right, so now, is this thing clean? Almost. So again, there's like a lot of stuff I'd probably contemplate further on. Like, is this promise all good? I mean, yeah, maybe. Seems like they can just all run in parallel so we can kind of speed up the network request. Because if you did a async await here, and you ran one and then the next, and then the one after that, like it's just gonna be slow 3 requests sequentially is going to be much slower than 3 requests in parallel. e.target.column name field is empty. Okay. I mean, sometimes you can do something like this. Like if you don't want to have your components know about E, like they could just take in a column name like this. But it's a submit. You know, let me not do that. Let me not get too ahead of myself. Okay, so there are some things I probably would consider like reevaluating what we're doing, because like this is a smell. Like why does this column have to know about so many different things just to be able to do its thing? You know, it's like the column has to know about how to get the columns, and then like also how to get the tasks and how to set stuff and how to do stuff. I think this column is doing too much, and I would probably, if I had more time, figure out ways to like reduce how much stuff this thing needs to know about, because right now it needs to know about a lot of stuff. And I forgot to move this thing. Like here's another thing I could have moved out. Ugh, I feel bad like not doing it, so let's just do it real quick. I'm gonna go ahead and just do that one, and this one's gonna be called, what do we call it? Is on delete. What are we deleting? We're deleting the, I don't know what we're deleting. On delete is the column. I think it's deleting the column. So like delete column.js export const delete column. I thought I was gonna be done, but like this last thing is just gonna bother me if I don't get rid of it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and just get rid of this. Get rid of this whole thing. Return new promise. Resolve. And just know that like you're supposed to do error handling too. Like you should probably reject instead of resolving both, but I ain't got no time for that. So let's just go ahead and do this. Figure out what index we're deleting. Go ahead and do that. This thing could be called delete column. Pass it the index. Do a dot then. Do that. Cleaner. All right, so let's make sure it works. I'm gonna click on delete and it's gone. So that works still. Please don't tell me there's any more DB stuff in this file. There is. Like, what is this thing doing? On success, this thing is updating, or it's adding, it's creating a task. Okay. Sorry, y'all. I'm not giving up. I want to clean this code up. So let's just go ahead and pull this whole thing out. Like so. Go ahead and put it right here. This thing could be resolved here. Go ahead and do that. Create task. Dot then. Call a function. Pass that stuff in. Was this I'm gonna rename that the handle create task, because like we had some name conflicts going on. Handle create task. And what we want to do is this thing needs to take in probably task name, board ID, column ID. I don't know if it needed index. I'm not even sure what index was. So let's pass it task name, board ID, and column ID. Board ID, column ID, and I think this was called like index. Wait, how was this working before? Task name. I guess it's just task name. There we go. Object, OpenDB, and a get object store gone. We don't need this in this file anymore. So let's make sure that works. Adding a task does not work. So let's make sure create task is being called. And then I should be getting the tasks again. Which, let's see. On success, does this stuff, stores it, resolves. returns the promise, task ID, board ID, column ID. So, I mean, let's just go here and make sure this is getting hit. Like when I type in something, we are getting there, carrying out the task name, and then we're going to get the task. So I'm going to dive into get tasks and figure out what this is doing, which I think the issue is that get tasks, this thing should probably do something like this. So I'm going to make a function called fetch tasks, which is literally going to do this. And then I'm going to pass it down here. I'm going to say get task will be that function. So that the column, when it calls get task, like it doesn't have to worry about setting it anywhere. I don't know if that was the fix. Obviously it wasn't. So let's go back and try to figure that out. So fetch tasks is getting called here. And get oh wait, fetch tasks. This needs a board ID. Again, just use TypeScript, please. There we go. Don't know what I did, but looks like it's working now. Okay, it's not working. So when the page first loads, again, we're doing something wrong. So use effect, find out when the page first loads. We get the board info, we set the board. We get the columns in the board. But we're not getting the tasks that maybe I deleted that. I think I might have deleted that or something. All right, y'all. I'm going to call it. I think this code is definitely cleaner than it was. There's still stuff that if I had more time, I'd go and like try to figure out like what I would change. But overall, I am happier with this code. There's not like indexedDB code sprinkled everywhere. I cleaned up some random stuff along the way. But yeah, if you enjoyed watching this, be sure to give me a like, leave a comment, join my Discord if you want to talk to me directly or ask other people in my community questions if you're trying to learn how to code. We got a lot of people who are willing to help out. So yeah, whew, I'm tired from this refactoring. This was intense. I don't know why. It's just moving stuff to different files. But anyway, have a good day and happy coding.